My alien roommate's locked room turned out to hold a message. Addressed to me, the door to Sarah's room had never been locked before. Not once in the 4 months we'd shared the pod. That's what made me stop in the hallway at 2 a.m., glass of water in hand, staring at a red access light that hadn't been there yesterday. Sarah wasn't home. Her shift at the observation deck ran until dawn, and someone, or something, had sealed her door from the inside. I should have gone back to bed. I want to be upfront about that. Every reasonable version of me knew that whatever was behind that door was none of my business. I knocked anyway. Nothing answered, obviously. But the console beside the frame flickered once, gave a soft chime, and displayed 6 words in blocky, unfamiliar script that shifted a second later into English. Message queued. Recipient: Daniel Reyes, my name. My actual name spelled correctly on a locked door that belonged to my Threnai roommate, who had never once mentioned owning a system capable of doing that. If you've never had a door address you by name at 2 in the morning, congratulations, and also, subscribe now, because I promise this gets stranger. I want to back up. Because you need to understand what Sarah and I were to each other before any of this happened, so you understand exactly how much the ground shifted underneath me that night. We'd been paired by the station's housing office, the way most mixed species tenants are. An algorithm decided a human, linguistics tech, and a Threnai systems architect could survive sharing a pod, and against every reasonable expectation, we did more than survive it. We built something quiet and easy. Breakfast some mornings when our shifts lined up, her correcting my terrible pronunciation of Threnai vowels, me pretending not to notice the way she went very still and focused whenever I laughed at something she said, like she was filing the sound away somewhere private. I'd noticed for a while. I just hadn't said anything, because Threnai courtship customs are a minefield I'd already blundered through once, 3 months in. I'd told her offhandedly that her voice was steady, meaning it as a compliment on how calm she always sounded. Turned out steady is a word Threnai reserve almost exclusively for describing a bonded partner's presence. She hadn't spoken to me for 2 days after that, mortified, and it had taken her that long to explain why. So when a locked door lit up with my name on it, my first thought wasn't fear. It was, what did I do this time? The console flickered again. Authorization required. Voice match: Daniel Reyes. I said my own name out loud into an empty hallway like an idiot, and the door unlocked. I want to be clear that I hesitated. I stood there long enough to consider every reason I shouldn't go in, that this was her private space, that whatever this was clearly wasn't meant for me to find this way. The trust wasn't something you walked through uninvited, even when the door itself was inviting you, but it had my name on it, and some instinct, quiet and certain, told me this wasn't an accident. I went in. Her room was almost bare. Threnai don't decorate the way humans do. They consider clutter a kind of noise, except for one wall, which was covered floor to ceiling in a soft blue projection I'd never seen before. Star charts. Dozens of them, overlapping, annotated in that same shifting script. And in the center, paused mid-playback, was a recording of her. I hadn't touched anything yet. The system had simply been waiting. For me, specifically. And now it unpaused itself the second I stepped fully into the room, like it had been holding its breath. Sarah's recorded voice filled the space, quieter than I'd ever heard her. None of the crisp precision she used at the observation deck. If you're hearing this, Daniel, it means the failsafe triggered, which means I'm off station, and something's gone wrong with the timeline I built this around. I need you to listen to the whole thing before you come find me. Please, I know how this looks. I sat down slowly on the edge of her bed, because my legs had stopped being reliable. 6 weeks ago, recorded Sarah continued, I found something in the old colonial architecture layer under Corvale Station. A dormant relay, Threnai built, pre-accord, older than the station charter itself. It wasn't supposed to still be active. It was. The star charts on the wall shifted as she spoke, zooming into a cluster I didn't recognize. It's been transmitting for decades to a coordinate that shouldn't exist. A Threnai colony ship listed as lost with all crew, 200 years ago. Except the relay's still receiving replies, Daniel. Someone out there is still answering. My chest went tight in a way that had nothing to do with romance and everything to do with the sudden, dizzying sense that the woman I'd been quietly falling for had been carrying something enormous, alone, under my own roof. "I didn't tell you because I didn't want to pull you into something dangerous before I understood it," she said. "But I kept finding reasons I wanted to tell you anyway. That's the part I need you to know, whatever else happens. Every time I decided to keep this from you to protect you, some other part of me wanted to hand you the whole thing and just trust you with it. I don't know what that means about me. I think you might." I sat there in the blue light of a 200-year-old mystery, listening to a woman tell me she'd been quietly building a relationship with me, one careful, contradictory decision at a time, and felt something in my chest crack open the way it does right before you admit something to yourself you've been avoiding for weeks. "If you're watching this and I haven't come back," her recording said, voice tightening, "the relay's physical node is in the old maintenance ring, sub-level 9, past the sealed colonial partition. Don't go alone. Don't trust station security until you know who authorized the original decommission order, because someone did, and someone's been quietly overriding it since. And Daniel," she paused on the recording, in a way that felt too raw to have been rehearsed, "if this is the last thing I get to say to you, I want it to be true. I should have told you all of this weeks ago. Not because I needed your help, because I wanted you to know." The projection ended. The room went dark and ordinary again, like it had never held any of that at all. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark of her room until my legs worked again. Then I went to sub-level 9. Because I want to tell you honestly, there was never a version of that night where I didn't go. The maintenance ring hadn't been touched in decades. Dust in drifts along the walls, emergency lighting long dead. The colonial-era partition exactly where her chart said it would be, sealed with a lock mechanism older than anything I'd worked with before. I almost didn't get through it. If it hadn't been for the exact same first-wave architecture I'd wasted a college minor learning, the kind of useless, specific knowledge nobody ever thinks will matter until the one night it does, I'd have been stuck outside that door until morning. Instead, I got it open just as Sarah came around the corner behind me, breathless, station badge in hand. 3 station security officers trailing her, looking deeply unimpressed with both of us. "You went in," she said, staring at me like she couldn't decide whether to be furious or relieved. "You actually went into my room. You put my name on the door," I said. "What was I supposed to do, politely decline?" "I set that failsafe as a last resort, Daniel. Not an invitation for you to break curfew and walk into a restricted maintenance zone at 3 in the morning. You said you wanted me to know," I said, and that stopped her cold. The recording. "You said if it was the last thing you got to say to me, you wanted it to be true. So I'm here. Tell me the rest of it in person." The security officers exchanged a look and, with the kind of tax station personnel develop after years of interspecies drama, decided to inspect the partition seal from a very studious distance. Sarah closed the gap between us slowly, some of the fight going out of her shoulders. "I found the relay 6 weeks ago," she said, quieter now, real instead of recorded. "I've been coming down here at night trying to trace the signal without triggering whoever's been maintaining it in secret. I built the failsafe because if something happened to me down here, I didn't want it to just end, unexplained. I wanted someone to know why. Why me? Because you're the only person on this station I trust enough to hand it to," she said. And then, like the words had been queued up behind that one for weeks, waiting for their own kind of authorization. "And because I've been careful about you since the vowel lessons, Daniel, and I'm tired of being careful." I felt that land somewhere just under my ribs. "I've been careful too," I admitted, "since roughly the 3rd breakfast. I just didn't have a 200-year-old mystery to blame it on." Something in her face, that particular Threnai stillness she got when she was filing something away as important, broke into an almost laugh, startled out of her. "We should deal with the relay," she said, not moving away. "We should," I agreed. Also not moving. Neither of us dealt with the relay for a full 10 seconds, which doesn't sound like much until you've spent it standing close enough to someone that you can feel the warmth coming off them. Both of you finally done pretending you hadn't noticed. The relay itself, once security cleared us through, turned out to be exactly as dangerous as she'd feared, and stranger than either of us expected. A genuine Threnai signal node, Decades dormant, still faithfully forwarding messages to a colony ship the official records called lost. What we found on the other end of that signal is a story for another night, because it changed everything about what the Threnai homeworld thought it knew about that ship's disappearance, and it deserves its own telling. But that night, in the dust and dead light of Sub-Level 9, what mattered most wasn't the relay. It was Sarah's hand finding mine in the dark while the security team worked. Steady the way I'd once clumsily called her voice steady. And neither of us pulling away this time. For what it's worth, I said. I'm glad your door had my name on it. For what it's worth, she said. So am I. We stayed like that a while, the old signal humming somewhere in the walls around us. 200 years of silence finally breaking open into something that felt, for the first time, like it belonged to both of us. If a locked door lit up with your name on it at 2 in the morning, would you have walked in, or waited for morning and an explanation? I want to know what you'd have done, so tell me in the comments, and if you liked riding this one out with me, stay a while. There are a lot more strange signals, older secrets, and slow burn stories like this one still coming. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one.